This short tutorial video will introduce you to the new calendar for OU Campus. In this video, we'll talk about logging in, discuss the scope of events for the calendar that we can create, and finally talk about managing contacts, events, and locations for the calendar. Now, to log into the calendar, and you may want to jot this down because this is slightly different than logging into OU Campus, you just go to oucalendar.uaex.edu. Once again, that website was oucalendar.uaex.edu. This brings you to the main calendar page. Once on this page, you'll notice that you can look at the calendar by viewing it by day, week, month, year, or by category. You'll notice that the calendar can be split by locations, farm and ranch, which is what is being shown now, yard and garden, environment and nature, and so on. For example, if I click on Yard and Garden, we'll notice that it brings up upcoming events for the week under Yard and Garden. Now, to continue the login process, we've gone to oucalendar.uaex.edu, and now I'll just scroll down, and on the left navigation, I'll look for Events Calendar Info. Under Events Calendar Info, I'll simply click on Manage Events. This brings up the login page for Beadwork, which hosts the OU calendar on our website, and I'll just log in using my Active Directory credentials. This brings me to the main menu for managing the calendar, and I'll notice that I have options for adding an event, managing events, adding a contact or managing contacts, adding a location or managing locations. In this video, we'll focus on the bottom three options for managing events, contacts, and locations. Before we get started, I would like to mention two important things that we should consider. The two important things to consider are the scope of events and checking the location and contact list. For the scope of events, just remember that any events created for the calendar should be public, not private events. For example, office Christmas parties or meetings would not be appropriate for the calendar. However, weekly or monthly 4-H meetings that are for the public would be appropriate for the calendar. Also, note that if you are attending an extension event, the party responsible for hosting the event will put it into the calendar. So, if you're just an attendee, you don't need to be the one to put it on the calendar and create duplicate events. The folks hosting will be the ones who will actually create that event for the calendar. The second important thing to consider is to check the location in the contact list before you create an event. This is because the contact and location information for your event will be chosen as you fill out the event form. So the information for each one must already be entered before you create your event. You can check that the contact and location information has already been entered by looking at Manage Contacts or Manage Locations as we are about to view now. Now that we've discussed the scope of events and checking for our locations and contacts, let's take a look at managing events. So if I click on Manage Events, it will open up the Manage Events page. I'll notice that at this point I'm viewing all events that start today, so January 14th, through the next 10 days. However, if I want to change that date, I simply click on Days and choose the amount of days I would like to look forward. I've chosen 36, so this would have added the events that I can view for up to 36 days from the 14th. I can also filter these events by category. You'll notice that the names here for category mirror the categories that are listed here under each event. This filter works in the same way that the different calendar viewing options worked on that main calendar page that we first viewed before we logged in all the way. Whenever I'm looking at Manage Events, I can look at the title of an event, the start and end time and date, topical areas, categories as we've mentioned, as well as the description of each event. If I want to edit an event, I simply click under the title part of the event that's in blue. You'll notice that this highlights that event, and it would bring up the event form that we'll look at in part 2 of the OU Campus Calendar video. At this point, I just want to click back on Main Menu, and we'll talk about managing contacts. So once again, before you create an event, you'll want to check here to make sure that your contact has already been entered. So I'll click on Manage Contacts. These are the contacts that have been added so far. We'll see that there's a name, a phone number, an email address, as well as a URL if more information is needed. If you hover over a name, it highlights that name, much as it did under Managing Events, and I could click on that name if I wanted to edit it on the contact form, which we'll look at in part 2 of our video. I could also click Add New Contact here to add a new contact, but we'll discuss that more in part 2 of this video as well. At this point, I just want to click back on Main Menu, and now I want to click on Manage Locations, which is the second thing I should check before creating my event. Under Manage Locations, all county offices have already been added, as well as state and administrative offices and even research centers. If you would like to check for your location, you can scroll down the alphabetically organized list and look for the location that you would like to add for your event. Each location has an address, which is actually the name of the location, a subaddress, which is that physical address for the location, as well as a URL. Now this URL is actually a link to Google Maps where you can find directions to the location itself. At this point, I just want to click back on Main Menu, which brings me back to the main calendar page. This concludes the tutorial video for OU Campus Calendar Part 1. I strongly encourage you to visit ruwebready.wordpress.com and click on Tutorial Videos under How-Tos and Resources to view Part 2 of this tutorial or to view additional tutorial videos.